everyone. Happy Saturday. Hope you all are well. Thank you so much for spending time with Team Yasmine on a Saturday. My name is Yasmine-Imani McMorrin. I'm incredibly honored to be running for Culver City Council. During the day, I serve as the interim Dean of Students and Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at USC Gould School of Law. And for our city, I serve as the Vice Chair of the General Plan Advisory Committee. And I just wrapped up service with the Equity Strategic Planning Committee with our school district. So today, we just want to make sure that folks are sharing out the stream, if you're so inclined, with the hashtags Team Yasmine and Vote McMorrin. We always want to make sure that we are amplifying the campaign. We want to make sure that folks know who I am and what we're all about here. So thank you so much for doing so. And basically, our campaign is about centering equity and inclusion in every city policy. We want to see our values truly reflected by our budget allocations. And we want to make sure that we are promoting safe and thriving neighborhoods for all members of our community here in Culver City. We really need to center equity so that policy works for everyone here. And that is really, what this conversation today is centered on. Public safety is just a hot topic right now, public safety and policing. Honestly, it's been an incredibly heavy week for me as a Black woman and a member of the BIPOC community. So sending love to folks who are just having a hard time just trying to get through this moment. Of course, rest in peace to Breonna Taylor and the countless others across this nation who, have been subjected and have succumbed to police violence, unfortunately. So again, sending love to everyone because it's tough. It's tough and we're human and we just have to acknowledge that. So town halls are definitely important. We are amplifying public safety and what that means. In the general plan, we've been spending time investigating in that and making sure that we are amplifying the work of organizations like Million Dollar Hoods, who have shared information, looking at the data from Culver City, which is a little concerning, but we'll get into that a bit later. And in these conversations, we are bridging the divide. I wish I could be there in person to answer questions and all of that with you. But again, if anything comes up, please place it in the comments and we'll make sure to get to your questions. So today we have Portia Allen Kyle, who will delve a little bit into this conversation with us. She is a civil rights attorney and a girlfriend from law school who I love dearly, and also principal consultant at FuturaBold. So I definitely wanted to introduce you guys to Portia, and I guess, Portia, if you want to share something with the people right now, and then we'll go to our other guy.
Yeah, just hi, everyone. Very happy to be here, always in support of Yasmine for her candidacy for Culver City Council. I'm looking forward to the conversation this evening on public safety. It's such a pressing issue, so much to talk about. And, hopefully we'll be able to dive into all of the important questions and all of the important issues. So thank you, Yasmine.
Thank you. We also have, I don't know if I'm back yet. I don't know if, okay, great. We also have in the conversation today, London McBride. London is a police officer, pastor, and a change agent. I happen to know London McBride because of his wife, Summer, who's amazing, in our work with the Culver City Community of Color Collective. So thank you so much for spending time with us today, London. And if you want to just tell folks a little bit about you and what you hope to bring to the conversation today.
Well, thank you, Yasmine. I appreciate it. I'm here just to be um, just a voice of of where we are in policing. And just to give my insight on what I know, just like Yasmine said, I was a pastor, so my heart is truly for people. So anything that we can do to fix problems that we're having, I'm all in for it, and I definitely support Yasmine for City Council. So it's an honor to be here to hang out with them all.
Thank you so much, London. So we also have another panelist who, due to just life, she's going to be coming on a little later, and that's Bitania. But she'll join us in a bit, and we're giving grace because that's all about what this COVID time is about. So when she's available, she'll join us here on the stream. And so I just wanted to start. I know that we pulled some images from Million Dollar Hoods. So I wanted to amplify that. And that's led by Dr. Kelly Lytle Hernandez, who is also a Culver City resident, MacArthur genius. And she, in conjunction with the general plan, did a presentation for our community, just highlighting some of the data that is here in front of you. And I just wanted to look at the disproportionality in terms of who is typically arrested or who is typically having interactions with CCPD here in Culver City. So I wanted to amplify that. And if folks are curious about methodology or want to learn more about that work, I know that some of that is included on the pictureculvercity.com from the general plan presentation, but also feel free to look into Million Dollar Hoods as well, because I'm sure they have that information there as well. So with me, you know, I've only been in Culver City for just over 4 years now. And I remember when my daughter and I were trying to find apartments and trying to figure out, you know, where we were going to live in Culver City, encountering other Black folks or other folks of color, and folks saying, "Are you sure you want to live in Culver City?" You know, like sort of giving me a little pushback because of the legacy of us having a sundown town, because of restrictive covenants and things of that nature. And just sometimes the reputation of the police department here just made folks give, you know, they just threw the question back at me, and I was definitely confident that I wanted to be here. And overall, honestly, our experience has been good. But in this moment of reimagining, and where we're hearing so much from public comment and just from our youth and other folks who have had less than ideal experiences with law enforcement, and just sort of reflecting just this moment of thinking about how can we think about safety differently? How can we disentangle the concept of safety from policing? Does it always have to mean, you know, calling an armed officer to be safe? So Portia, I guess let's start with you. Like, from as an attorney that practices in this particular area, what do you think are some barriers to reimagining public safety, if any? And the reason why I'm starting there is because I think this is a new concept for a lot of folks. This is, you know, when you think safety, most people do think of police. And so as we are trying to figure out what this is going to look like, do we have any barriers? I know that other cities have been exploring in this area. Seattle, New York, even LA has been looking at doing some things differently. So I'm just curious, from what you've learned and what you've seen, are there any barriers that you know of?
Yeah, you know, it's a really good question, because oftentimes, you know, and it's not to say that we don't have very terrible bodies of law on policing, because we do. But by and large, I would probably say that the toughest barriers are really imagination, right? And fear. That, you know, safety has always meant particular things. To particular people. You know, we have heavily invested in police as the sole kind of provider of public safety, often at the expense of other kind of community needs that can also produce, you know, good results in public safety, right? So, you know, this is, you know, having a kind of strong network of social services, affordable housing, and, the provision of ample jobs that pay a livable wage, that, investing in school systems that are, well-funded and well-resourced and, meet the needs of a variety of different students, et cetera. These are all things that produce public safety. But oftentimes we are focused on the policing. We are, focused on kind of investing in, that kind of hard show, the visible show of, what we think safety is, that it limits what we're willing to do. The other side of that, with the lack of imagination, with the fear of doing something different, also means little political will to do so. And so, I would largely say that, in my experience, those are the more powerful barriers than anything else. Cities have the power to defund, and like whether you think it's kind of defunding because police aren't necessarily doing what we think they do or doing what we think they do very well. Or whether it's just, from a business perspective, like, would you keep investing millions upon millions upon millions that often, leads to legal liability that doesn't produce the results? There are very few fields where collectively, there can be kind of so many missteps where you would continue to throw money at it. And so either side makes sense for a defunding perspective. And that's all within local control to do so often, and decide where that money goes. And communities need to decide what safety looks like for themselves.
Right. So thank you. And in the general plan, we put out a survey. I think the deadline was on the 15th, and they were able to release some of the preliminary results at the last general plan meeting, which I think is recorded and also would be up on picture culvercity.com, I think. So if you're curious to hear some of that, but it was a lot of, maybe domestic violence, maybe mental health, care for our unhoused neighbors could be shifted out. So there are a lot of ideas percolating that are community centered. As you guys know, my campaign has taken the stance to look at reallocating 50% and doing so, with a plan, making sure that we have successful metrics and outputs, and making sure that it's in communication and in partnership with our community. But we really want, and I think all anybody wants, is for folks to be and feel safe. And that's really my goal. So that definitely echoes that. And it looks like Bitania is here with us. I want to make sure to introduce her. Hi. So Bitania is the founder of POC for Change. I am in awe of the work that our youth here in Culver City are doing. And so I wanted to make sure that we were able to have, Bitania here with us. And so welcome. I know that you had a lot going on today, so I deeply appreciate you making time. Take a deep breath, girl. It's all good. We're here for you. Do you want to say a little bit in the beginning just about you and POC for Change?
Of course. So I'm a freshman at San Jose State University. I just graduated from Culver City High School last I was going to say fall, but spring. And POC for Change, we kind of started off we had one protest, and we were thinking of how do we build the momentum and how do we continue change throughout youth, because a lot of things youth, everything's closed down pretty much because everything relies on school. So we just thought of hey, we should probably do this. We just advocate for equitable education, and that's pretty much it. I'll go into it later.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. And we'll come to you in a bit. So, London, I'm going to switch over to you. So as a police officer, pastor, change agent, and most importantly, a Black man, right? What does this push for reimagining public safety mean to you? Oh, you're still muted.
So, yeah. So when all this, I think when all this came out, it was, it was a little, startling to us what does that really mean? I mean, because at first it was the whole defund movement, and we really didn't have, I guess there really wasn't. It didn't seem like there was a plan. It seemed like it was a knee-jerk reaction. But the more people started to talk about it, and the more plans came into play, you kind of got a glimpse of what people wanted it to be. But I think when it really comes down to it, it's going to take all of us kind of putting our heads together, from police chiefs to council members to community members. Anyway, I think if we all get together and kind of figure out what does this look like, then I think it'll work. It'll be beneficial. I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing, and one of the things that I would love to push in regards to this whole movement, would be education, and like history of why these things need to be as they should be now. Because I don't think that in our profession that we truly get that type of education in regards to what is policing, what was policing way back when. What did it really look like? You get a small view of it, but you really never dive deep into it and the trauma that it caused, that it really caused people. So I think an educational component would be huge. And I think, like, being a Black man, living in Culver City, and just in general, and raising 5 Black boys, I think that's the biggest thing that we talk about is that educational component. I'm optimistic, to be honest with you. I'm really optimistic, but I think, and it really has to be all of us sitting at the table and figuring out what it looks like. I know in the position that I worked in at UCLA, in their police department, we've done things with our mental health and our dean of students that, I was just thinking about that. I said, that is an amazing model on how police and community work together, and police aren't called for everything. And I think, having plans like that would benefit the masses. So, yeah.
Sure. Thank you for that. I want to make sure to lift up, as a part of the general plan, representatives from LA County, Care First, Jails Last, also presented. So I don't know if we can amplify that link in the banner, but I want to make sure that folks are also plugged into that, because there is county level efforts to divert and make sure that we're providing care to folks instead of criminalizing folks. But yes, I completely agree, London, that we have to have more education. I mean, it's tough when we think about policing, and I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but my late father was a Newark police detective for most of my life, was a member of the Fraternal Order of Police. So, so I have that lens. And I think the calls for accountability and transparency, and, sort of holding that the legacy of policing, as has it started, with catching, enslaved Africans, right? I think that is really, we have to sort of draw that line from, enslavement to Jim Crow to really mass incarceration, and even to the prison, to school to prison pipeline, right? I feel like there's a there's a line that can be connected through all of those things that it's important to name. It's important for all members of our community to be aware of, this connection, so that we can make different choices, or that we can really shape policy and regulations that are mindful of that, and really bring us to a community-focused lens, or an equity-focused lens. So Bitania, and I hope I'm saying your name correctly. I hope that's right. So I know that POC for Change has worked with $1 Million Hoods, and you guys are always, amplifying and doing really good work here in Culver City. But I just wanted to ask just a little bit more directly, if you wanted to share any more about what POC for Change has done specifically regarding public safety in Culver City, and that could include any experiences that you'd like to lift up and share regarding youth in our community and safety overall as well. I want to make sure to give space for that.
Yeah, of course. So currently POC for Change, we do a lot, but we currently created or are currently creating 3 different committees, or I believe there's 4, but I'm going to say 3 now because one of them is kind of not in the focus as much. But we have a sexual misconduct group that's currently working on creating just an outlet between survivors and admin on how they can fix the issues that they have right now, where basically people are reporting their cases and they're not necessarily even getting followed up on anything. They just report it once and nothing happens. And then it's just creating a better line between that, and just creating a better line between survivors and administration and SROs when things get reported. I know a big component that they were pushing for, that group was pushing for specifically sexual assault survivors go directly to a therapist versus going to SROs first to report what has happened to them. And we just believe strongly that somebody who is trained in that, it should be specifically for that community, in terms of community. And then we have the discipline group. That's when you talk about the school to prison pipeline, we have a committee opened with that, with the new assistant principal, Jennifer Padilla, who is currently, I believe, rewriting policy on the discipline policies, because there was some correlation between BIPOC students being the most punished and getting most suspensions. So we're just trying to overall stop that and then have more de-escalation, things happening in the classroom. And then we also wanted to heavily bring on teachers being more involved with students and hey, if anything's wrong, if a student comes late, just ask them, hey, why are you late? Did something happen at home? Versus just giving them a detention. And then we have the mental health group, which advocates for better mental health. They also have a committee. Those 3 all have a committee opened up with, I believe that mental health committee is with Dr. Tarvid. And then they're working on just creating better, or I think a more efficient pipeline between students who need more help, like an emergency line. And then I think that's pretty much in terms of community safety within the school itself. And then we also have community-led organizations, like recently the created organization Venice Culver Project for the Unhoused, which is youth-led. And it's just giving more voices to, I guess, unhoused people who usually don't have a voice in community, and their interactions with police aren't so nice. I was a little late. I'm not gonna lie. I was a little late to this call because I was talking to one of my unhoused neighbors, Tatiana. We love her. She's really sweet. But she was just talking to me about how community, in the terms of police and policing with unhoused residents, her most recent interaction with police was when she was asleep. And they just put, I think she's on, I don't know, a high beam on their car, and they were just watching her sleep for, she said, at least 30 minutes. And she was don't they have anything else to do? And then another thing with us, when we were working and handing out food during one of our food drives, a police cruiser drove by, and they opened the window and they're like, "Good job." And I was just like, you can be here with us. You can actively be handing out stuff, helping us. We believe POC for Change, and more funding going to community involvement, community orgs such as that. Yeah, that's just a little bit of what we've been doing.
Girl, what don't y'all do? This is fantastic. I love it. Keep up the great work. There was so much in that, but I love, I haven't been out with you guys yet. I hope to, for the next drive, hope to be able to make it. But I really salute you all for leading the charge, really showing up for our unhoused neighbors, and really filling the gap, connecting your experiences with the policy and making sure that it happens. So again, kudos to you all for doing that incredibly important work. So Portia, going to circle back around for you. I know that you're involved in several sort of national networks, and your ear is really to the ground. So I just wanted to, if there are any sort of best practices from the national level that you could share for us that might be helpful here in Culver City, or just for folks to even know about, I wanted to allow space for that.
It's funny because I think there's been, especially from the policy side, over the past Well, I'd really say, like, with the professionalization of a lot of things has come, this, like, what are the best practices? What does the research say? What is this? And in a lot of ways, the question on public safety to me is like really one that is more about morals than it is necessarily about data and this and that. And that, like, if we're waiting for the data to tell us, for example, that like defunding is the way to go, like we're not going to get that data because like it just doesn't exist, right? Like someone has to have the courage to do it first, before we can begin to study it, et cetera. What we, kind of can see in the kind of few examples that it's happened, that, there is evidence that is kind of building on the, like, best practice side, if you will, that, less police involvement doesn't, lead to kind of wild west of, crime in places, right? That, not being so punitive and, asking, holding people for cash bail just because they're poor, doesn't mean people are out here committing more crimes. Lowering sentences and kind of providing resources for people, as they are reentering communities, lowers recidivism, right? Like it, helps people, really get out there. And so like there are like what we do know about the kind of evidence that does exist that we've been seeing across the country is that it's, kind of all in support of a smaller, tighter, less involved, less intrusive system. And I, kind of say that, and I think that that is a really important part, really important point, just because, what we don't see evidence of is that like more police, longer sentences, longer, SROs in schools, criminalizing every, aspect of life, et cetera, et cetera. Like what we haven't seen is that any of that produces more safety. Yeah. And so, really thinking then on, how to, well, I guess the one thing I'd add, like, since we haven't seen that any of that produces more safety, the flaw in the arguments against defunding the police is the assumption that there is this right size of the criminal justice system that we currently have right now, despite the fact we know that it is like grown and amplified, and just boomed exponentially over the past 40 years. Right. And we're not safer because of it. And in many ways, particularly for people of color, for Black people especially, are much more unsafe because of it. And so, what to me, it really is a question of, morality, like what is the right thing to do and how can, we have the courage to do something different and taking that stand. And that, I think, will set the trend, right? Like someone needs to do it first. I think, unfortunately, what we've seen in Minneapolis is, what happens when people take stands when there is not the clear, I think London mentioned it earlier, with the plans and the how exactly will this happen. No one is talking about like getting rid of police tomorrow, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a plan and we're working towards a vision where that is less. And, unfortunately with Minneapolis, it's like somewhat become a little bit of a lesson of, what happens when you kind of say the right things and don't really, have the oomph or the juice behind it and things of that nature. And there's a number of those lessons across. And so the courage is what we're looking for. And why I think you'd be so great on city council to like step in on your values and do the right thing and demonstrate that courage, live your values and, make those right decisions.
Well, thanks for tying that up nicely for me. No, but I totally agree. I often struggle with our society's fascination with punishment as a solution to
everything.
It's yes. And so much, when it's really, we're really talking about poverty. It's like, why are people making certain choices? And, what could this society look like if we provided the resources to folks instead of arresting them, instead of putting them in jail, instead of, suspending children who might be having a bad day because of something completely unrelated to, something going on inside the school. So it does take courage. And I think it's a perspective shift because it's something that we really don't have a lot of practice doing, but I'm hopeful that with intentionality and community input, we can really go about making that change here in Culver City. There's no reason why we couldn't. So Lyndon, I'm gonna, since Portia brought you up, let's come back around to you. And so I think there's a lot of frustration, I think, and mistrust from folks, particularly in the Black and Latinx community, and that could be reflected, right, because of some of the disproportionality that we see in incarceration rates and arrest rates. But do you think that there can be increased accountability and transparency within police departments? And what do you think are ways that we can sort of rebuild trust and really move forward toward, a place and a community where everyone can be and feel safe? And that's a loaded question, so I don't expect you to have
loaded. Totally loaded. I really feel that the accountability is definitely is doable. It's just exactly what you all said. It's having the heart. Portia said it perfectly. It is really a matter of the heart. The things that are going on, you have to figure out, okay, who's doing this job and why are they doing this job? And when they're not doing it right, you have to be able to speak up on it and call them to the carpet on it, because it's not right. And if we're hurting people, we're going against everything that we took an oath for, and I think the transparency thing I think it's great. I think if we're able to have those dialogues and be able to communicate and talk about what's really going on, and I look at it from a point of view of us as law enforcement not always going to the community and saying, this is what you will do, this is how you shall do it, but to listen to our community members and say, okay, what do we need to do this job better? Because apparently we have not been doing it in the right way. So I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, like all of these funds being placed in the right places that help our community. And then even on top of that, add more funds to that, because I've had these conversations about the defund movement or reallocating funds, and my answer is still the same. Even if you take money away from our profession, you still better be willing to add more to the places that we really, really need it, because it's going to cost more. And I think if we don't have those conversations and we're not transparent with one another when it comes to those things, then we'll always be traveling around in this circle that never ends. So transparency is good, but when we get there, we have to be able to call those bad things bad, and be able to rebuild that trust with the community. I think a lot of it really just it comes down to, like you said, just being bold about it and not worrying about the outcome. Now there are a lot of things, and I know, like with different things, different crimes or different incidents that take place and that we see in the media, we're probably wondering, why wasn't this told before? Or why wasn't this told before? A lot of things have to do with what's being investigated and some of the things they just can't say right now. But I think that if there's a way, like it goes back down to rebuilding the trust. If the police had the trust of the community, then nothing would be questioned with how we were handling cases, because we would be doing things the right way. Community members would be feeling that we were doing things the right way. And so we have this relationship with one another, where that I'm going to do my job like I'm supposed to do it. And then it builds that trust. But until that trust is built, until that trust is renewed, then we're always, community members are always going to be skeptical of what police are actually doing in these investigations. And I think that's a sad place to be, because, really we're all supposed to be part of the same community.
I completely agree. And I think some of when we started having these reimagined public safety conversations at city council meetings, I felt there was a little gaslighting. I'm sure it wasn't intentional, but it was like, everything is fine. Our police officers and our department is doing, 21st century policing, and there are no problems. And then, like, directly following that, we heard all these public comments where youth and other members of our community, and even outside, shared sort of their, some of their negative interactions with our police. And I think no one gets it right all the time. No one is perfect. There are no perfect, human beings, or, there's not an expectation of perfection, but I hope that we can be to a point where we're able to acknowledge the harm that's done and really collectively say, this is how we're going to move forward. This is how we're going to be better. And this is how we're going to be in partnership with the community, our community, and make sure that we're serving everybody. And so I'm hoping that we can get there. Bitania, girl, am I saying your name right?
A little bit. It's Bitania.
Okay. Say it one more time.
Bitania.
Bitania, girl. I was loud and wrong. I'm so sorry. I really don't like when people say my name. Bitania, girl, I've been saying it wrong. I'm so sorry. So please. Okay. I want to circle back to you just because of your work with POC for Change and just being a young person. And what are some solutions regarding public safety that POC for Change is advocating for in Culver City? I know that you all are part of the protest that's going to happen tomorrow.
I'm helping like behind the scenes. I'm no longer a student at Culver, so I want to give those voices to the current students. So tomorrow there is a protest, a Black Lives Matter protest in solidarity with Breonna Taylor and her case. And just, just giving, oh, you have it. Okay, I have a new poster. I didn't show it, but it's the same exact time. But yeah, and it's just giving a voice to students who feel like, when we all heard that decision, we weren't surprised. I know that. So yeah, that's just something that we have been doing or planning, and that's tomorrow. And then on October 3rd, there's another drive for the unhoused. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question because I was laughing at the name thing. What was the question again?
Completely fine. I was just to compound on the events that you already have coming up tomorrow and on the 3rd. Mm-hmm. Are there any other solutions that POC for Change advocating for, whether it's within the school district via SROs or anything else that you'd like to share and make sure that folks know about? Because I always say we want to listen to folks who are experiencing the harm closest to the pain. So definitely to give you space to share that.
So there's a thing with I don't want to say it's SROs because the school board, and we love them. We love the school board. We love Kelly and Summer, but we've had a couple of complaints and things said about SROs to specifically Latinx and Brown students regards to things that should not have happened. And we're just pushing on this idea of qualified accountability versus qualified immunity. Because I'm going to share one story that I think is kind of important that nobody really hears because this is my friend's story, but I know she doesn't want my name out. She doesn't want her name out there, so I'll keep it anonymous. But she said that something a complaint was given to the office about something that she had done, but she had not done. It was off of suspicion, and an SRO and security guards pulled her into a room with an administrator on a false claim, basically making her say that she did do some certain crime by just with fear tactics and saying that they would do something if she didn't say that she did that certain thing. And she was saying the SRO had gotten his cuffs, and was just dangling them in her face. So when people talk about community involvement and community with youth, it's just, you have to remember that the pipeline exists. It's there.
Right.
Don't ignore it because it's hurting people. And I feel like people don't acknowledge that and don't want to acknowledge that. But we have to realize these relationships with these people. People don't know a lot of people in administration or if they wanted to go to help. It's just outlining who do you need to go to help? Who should you go to for help if you have this specific thing? And nothing's really outlined. What if you had a problem with admin? Who would you go to? I think a lot of students just don't understand that on where they should go if they need help. So just outlining that and outlining that we want I mean, I know PSC for Change really wants, like, pushing for CCPD to have more training for their officers. I mean, who wouldn't? I feel like that goes for every police department. Like, there's not enough training, because you have you have police officers showing up to calls where people are having crises because of their mental illness, and like they don't have the same compatibility that a social worker or a therapist would have. So I think just outlining, give people like the hotline calls. Like, you want people who know what they're doing on those specific calls. You just don't want somebody who's not saying that they could not do that activity, but somebody who is, educated more on that subject would help. Yeah, sorry. Let me stop babbling.
No, that was great. That was great. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing the story and the experience. It's important. So I'm glad you felt comfortable sharing it in this space. So this was a super heavy topic. Safety is something that we all value, right? We all want to live in a community that's safe for all of us. So I want to leave on a sort of high note. And I don't know if we've been fielding questions or if nothing came in, but if there are any quick questions, maybe we can get to it after this one. So what is making you hopeful during this time? Is there anything that is bringing you joy or light, or, just so we're not so we're leaving folks on a positive note? So that's for everybody. So whoever wants to go. Go ahead, London, you can start us off.
What makes me hopeful is that, there are those in the profession that are standing up for the truth and what we really want to do and how we want to do policing, and working with community, and working with even formerly incarcerated people that we know, trying to get them the resources that we can, and just doing our part to make the community whole. In the organization that I'm a part of, called Police Against Racism, that's our biggest thing, is how do we rebuild communities, and how do we take a stand within the organizations that we are in, to be able to call out the bad stuff that's going on, and get those folks that are doing the right thing to finally stand up for the right thing. I think, there's so many different ways that we can do our job, because you guys are all right. Like, we are not experts at everything, and we don't get that necessary training to become these mental health providers and things like that. But I tell you what, like I said, what I'm hopeful in is that the training changes, and being a part of our training cadre at my department, we get to implement these types of things. Like, how do we treat people out there? How do we build up communities? And that's been, doing that, I've been able to see a shift in the way that officers do their job. There's that heart behind it. And, it's one place that we're trying to affect it, but I think that when you put those types of people in those positions of leadership at departments, those that have the heart, those that listen to the community, those that take time to care, they know the history of policing and they don't want to repeat it anymore. I think when you put those people in leadership positions, you start this trickle down effect that ends up changing departments. And then that ends up becoming the best practices, because you at your department decided that we're not going to stand for this stuff anymore. We want to do what's right. And then you all are the model that other departments look at. So that's what makes me hopeful.
Thank you. That's a good one. What about you? Who's next?
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to jump in here. I think, kind of what makes me hopeful is people are paying attention, right? Like, for so long, it wasn't part of popular discourse. At most it would come in waves, talks about policing, and specifically what are some of the not only just an honest assessment of the problems, but also innovative potential solutions. And, that we have come, to a place where now kind of abolition and defunding and all the rest of it is kind of part of the dialogue that we've been having as a community and as a country. yeah, like I'm excited where things can go from here. It won't be overnight, right? But like people are paying attention. They're finally being honest, and I think the honesty is the first step to meaningful change.
Sure. Thank you. Girl, I do not want to butcher your name again, girl. So you just gotta come on in. I have no confidence right now.
My name is Bitania, yes.
Girl, come on, girl.
Okay. But I mean, I think that makes me hopeful is, the youth. I just don't think that adults realize like how like different we are from you guys. Like we're completely different. Like we want to see everything change. It's like we want environmental change. We want police reform. We want healthcare for people who can't afford it. I mean, we just want everything at this point. But I mean, I just feel hopeful that like we can do something. Like there's a future out there for us. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. But I mean, let me say some things. Remember, October 3rd, the food drive, and then tomorrow is the protest. So if you feel like you have a voice and you want to use it for good, go ahead. It's 12. Yep, right there. Yeah. Thank you for your time and vote for Yasmine.
Oh, thank you. And thank you all so much for participating in this really important conversation. Again, I think there tends to be such a sort of a forced dichotomy, like either you're with police or you're against police. And I think that the conversation really should be, are you for our community? Because I think we're all for our community. I think we should all be for all members of our community being safe and being treated fairly. And that's all this campaign is about. We're about equity. We're about, continuing Culver City's progressive trajectory, making sure that we're listening to folks who aren't necessarily always in the room, making sure that we're amplifying young voices. And so this movement, supporters, y'all make me hopeful. I mean, this is, a wild experience being a candidate, but I am humbled by the support. I'm really encouraged, and I really think we can do something. I really think we're moving towards something that's real and will have an impact in my family's life and hopefully for you all as well. So I want to make sure that folks get a chance to plug their ads wherever folks want to find folks and get engaged. So we know what's going on with POC for Change. We know what's going on with Portia. We know what's going on with London. So I don't know if we have banners or we want to throw that up now. Thank you, Mel. Shout out to my sister in love. I see her. And this is the link for the LA County Cares First Jails Last report. I also want to plug, hopefully most of you all are in LA County. Measure J does reallocate, I believe, 10% of funds in this spirit of reimagining safety. So please, Measure J, not G. Sorry, Kareem. J for justice. J for justice. Sorry, y'all know my accent comes in sometimes. So it's Measure J. So thank you. Look at quick. Shout out to the tech team. Shout out to Kareem. So please vote yes on Measure J. I want to make sure to amplify that the City Council's task force, the 3-month task force centered on reimagining policing in Culver City is going to be, that's right, on October 12th, because I was going to forget that. So yes, it's going to be then. So please register on WebEx and be a part of the conversation. Leave a public comment. So I definitely am running a little long. I know folks are going to be going, including me, going to sit for our schools after this, but just want to make sure that folks have time to share their ads. Oh, some are at the bottom. Great. I don't know. Are we going to roll them? Oh, great. So they're just going to roll them. So please follow and support our wonderful guests. Thank you again so much for sharing your expertise, your personal stories, and all of the work that you're doing to help all of us. Deeply appreciated. And we ran a little long tonight, but I think it was worth it. I hope that you all found it worthwhile. Please, if you'd like to give a donation, we always appreciate those. Head over to Vote McMorrin. Also, if you like to just grab a yard sign, window sign, any of those things, also go to Vote McMorrin and you can navigate it along the top. Deeply, deeply appreciate your time. And, you know, we're in this all together. I hope everyone is safe and well. And please sign up for phone banking. It's coming up soon. Please reach out to us at Vote McMorrin and indicate that you want to sign up for phone banking, because that is coming up next week for texting and phone banking. So please, we need to get the word out. I would appreciate all of the help. I want to make sure to amplify Portia's Twitter, which is It's Miss Portia on Twitter. So also follow her. I don't know if hers got to the bottom. But thank you all so much. Please, there you go. So follow Portia also. But thank you all for your time. And please, you know, give us feedback. Let us know what you thought. And just take good care of yourselves. Sending everyone good energy and grace to just get through COVID, you know, and just especially for the BIPOC community, sending you all love, love, love. This is it's hard times, and we're going to making our community better for all of us. So take care, everyone. Thank you so much.